Bridge of Spies takes place during the Cold War, because Lord knows Spielberg's adapted every other tragic event in the world's history.
Wow.
It begins with the Soviet Union shooting down and capturing a US pilot called Francis Gary Powers, played by Austin Stowell. Powers is sentenced to 10 years in prison, with his only hope being top New York lawyer James B. Donovan, played by Tom Hanks, who is recruited by the CIA to negotiate the pilot's release. However, the Soviets will only let Powers go if the US release a convicted KGB spy called Rudolph Abel, played by Mark Rylance, who Donovan had previously defended in court.
Okay, that's it, in a nutshell.
Based on true events, the real James Donovan had written an account of this tale in 1964 under the title Strangers on a Bridge. Sounds like a Hitchcock flick.
No, not really.
Plans for the movie allegedly began back in 1965 when Gregory Peck was trying to adapt it, with himself playing James Donovan and Alec Guinness as Rudolph Abel. Screenwriter Matt Charman ended up reading a footnote about Donovan's story and agreed to meet with his son in New York City before pitching it to several studios, and shocker, DreamWorks soon picked it up. So in turn, it didn't take long for none other than Spinacious Steve to join as the director.
Oh, thank you very much.
The Coen brothers soon joined the production to tweak the script, and allegedly they had a huge impact on the overall finished film. It was in May 2014 when the world collectively fell off their chairs in shock that Tom Hanks would be starring in a Steven Spielberg movie, as well as Mark Rylance, who had previously turned down a part in Empire of the Sun nearly 30 years earlier. Rylance in particular was grateful that the Coens' changes to the script actually helped to improve his involvement. Francis Gary Powers Jr. himself was even brought on as not only a technical consultant, but also providing a cameo in the movie as well. Though he did call the film out for incorrectly portraying his father as being told to commit suicide if he was shot down, nor was he ever tortured.
Those are good ideas.
It was in June when Fox 2000 Pictures agreed to help DreamWorks and Participant Media co-finance the movie, and it was also given an additional 3.7 million euros from the German Federal Film Fund.
We get the idea.
Shooting began on September the 8th, 2014 in the Brooklyn, New York area, transforming the streets to try to match a 1960s aesthetic, before heading overseas in Germany that October, and a year later Bridge of Spies was released on October the 4th, and smashed its $40 million budget with a worldwide gross of $165.6 million, receiving critical acclaim for the brilliant, as usual, work for Steven Spector direct it, and Tom Hanks, with Rylance also scooping up the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. However, some historians did step in to be party poopers regarding the historical inaccuracies. The movie sometimes shortens down time spans from reality, which historians felt gave the viewer a misleading representation of the era. Donovan himself also never saw Berlin Wall escapees being shot like the movie portrays, and the murder of Peter Fechter was also shown inaccurately, as he died a year after the exchange on the Glynnick Bridge. Donovan also was never shot at his home, didn't have his overcoat stolen.
I had mine stolen from me.
Well, this movie sucks! That's an outrage! Why would they change that? Disgusting. This movie sucks.
I doubt that that's genuine.
There's a scene where Donovan speaks to the judge to convince him to not have the potential Soviet spy be executed. In real life, this was said in court, while the movie shows it being at his home. There was also controversy surrounding the Abel character, as he is portrayed with a Scottish accent, despite him actually being born and raised around Tyneside in England, and therefore should have had a Geordie accent. I don't think that would have worked.
I got a very nasty spider bite. Woke up the next morning and it turned into 2 blood blisters on the side of my hand.
I don't even understand what you're doing.
However, some have argued that Abel may have been born in Newcastle, but he had Russian parents and spent some of his early years over in Scotland. Though he would return to Moscow in his late teens, he never lost his natural accent, so it may not have actually been that far-fetched.
The goddamn hell are you talking about?
The real Frederick Pryor even spoke out about inaccuracies in the film. He didn't cross the Berlin Wall during its construction, and the character of Vogel was also portrayed incorrectly as well, as he was a nice, quiet and well-spoken man. Donovan's own granddaughter also claimed that they portrayed his relationship with the CIA handler as antagonistic, whereas in reality they actually had a decent relationship. Well, I will admit, Spielberg maintains the habit of having a really good first hour. Abel is hilarious. His casual nature is brilliant as his home is being invaded by a bunch of FBI agents.
Visitors.
He barely reacts to anything and it's hilarious.
The death sentence is not a foregone conclusion, don't worry.
I'm not afraid to die, Mr. Donovan.
But then when he needs to, he gives some genuinely great moments with some brilliant dialogue. The performance is great.
Do you never worry?
Would it help?
The setup gives me To Kill a Mockingbird vibes, with Hanks receiving a shit ton of hate for defending a man that everyone else is convinced is guilty.
Had one accident, 111, losing control of the car and hitting 5 motorcyclists.
journalists. From their point of view,
The Jedi are evil!
I haven't done criminal work in years.
It's like riding a bike, isn't it? You distinguish yourself at Nuremberg.
I was on the prosecution team.
Not the point. You're no stranger to criminal law.
You caught Leonardo DiCaprio. Don't think I've forgotten. Hank's character is brilliant as he still believes that he deserves a fair chance and defends him regardless.
Jim, this man is a Soviet spy.
Allegedly.
Come on, counselor.
Your Honor, you're asking me to violate attorney-client privilege?
oh, come on, counselor.
You know, I wish people like you would quit saying, "Oh, come on, counselor." I didn't like it the first time it happened today. A judge said it to me twice. If the charge is true, he serves a foreign power, but he serves it faithfully. If he is a soldier in the opposing army, he is a good soldier. He has not fled the field of battle to save himself.
But Spielberg sure does love himself a racist social commentary, doesn't he?
Even aliens, in that case Chinese immigrants, could not be held to answer for a crime without due process of law.
Standing there like that, you remind me of a man who used to come to our house when I was young.
His name was Jimmy Savile. In a weird scene, Hanks manages to convince the judge to spare him the death penalty, and there's a huge uproar. I mean, calm down, he's a spy, not Ted Bundy. But the strange thing is, this didn't happen in real life. The courtroom wasn't filled with outrage, they actually accepted the verdict. They just fought for an acceptable sentence. It didn't necessarily have to be the death penalty, but after the sentencing is where it drops off for me. I mean, I actually forgot that it took place during a war, so when we cut to these fighter jets, I'm like, oh yeah! Can we go back to the funny Russian man now? Don't get me wrong, the special effects are incredible as he plummets to Earth, but it doesn't massively interest me now. It probably is just a me thing, but I found it far more interesting to watch Hanks trying to defend a man against an entire courtroom. Whereas he convinces the judge not to execute him, not really for any moral reason, but in case there's an off chance they need to exchange him for an American, which happens, and it's just not that interesting for me. Although it is a pretty sweet moment when the exchange takes place and they finally part ways after he defended him for so long.
An associate of mine.
Okay, that transition was amazing. Spielberg's just showing off at this point. So Steve, just a simple cut to a fella reading a newspaper, nothing too fancy. Hold my beer. It doesn't even happen anywhere else in the film. He's now grown accustomed to doing one incredible transition per movie and then moving on like nothing happened and never doing it again. The movie is alright. I was really invested in the first hour, but after that, it's not bad. It just doesn't keep me as engaged as the first part. It's a decent effort with great performances and dialogue, but it's not really for me. Yeah, I've got to say, the latter part of Spielberg's career gets trumped by the first.